Gavin Lux is gone. There's some money to spend. And Nick Krall, from his own lips, said, we're not done yet.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. What's up? My name's Jeff, his name's Steve, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. We've been podcasting about this team heading into our combined 16th season, been talking a while about these guys, and we bring you takes and analysis that you can't get anywhere else. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Reds, every single day, and we thank you for helping us make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the country. On today's show, a little bit later on, we're going to reminisce on some fun times at Reds Fest. It was a big time weekend, had a lot of fun, getting to meet a lot of everydayers, and we came away with a really strong feeling about number 9 and Matt McLain. We'll tell you about that later on. In just a few minutes, we're going to get into a couple of guys who weren't at Reds Fest and why at least one of them, maybe both of them, feels calculated. That's in a few minutes, though, because we're going to begin with the trade that Nick Krall made right before Reds Fest that was a little bit more so about what left than what came back, although they did get a little bit better in the bullpen with that trade. That's all on today's podcast. It is brought to you by FanDuel. Make sure you open up the FanDuel app on every NFL playoff game day and open up your Profit Boost pack. That's all over at FanDuel. All right, Steve, Nick Krall pulls off the 3-team trade, or he's part of the 3-team trade. Gavin Lux goes to Tampa. He's going to play for the Rays. The Rays say they know how to unlock his potential, whatever. He saves $3 million, or roughly $3 million, a little bit less than that, with this deal because he sends $5.25 to Tampa and he acquires $2.33 million in Brock Burke, left-hander relief pitcher from the Los Angeles Angels. The bullpen gets better. The budget gets better, and based on what he said, they ain't done yet.
Yeah, you look at that money, and that number is important because if you combine that with what we suspect based on our math, which we know how that goes sometimes, but based on our math with the available information that we have, the Reds still had about $4 million left to spend after the last bullpen signings. So this pushes them somewhere between 7 and 8, maybe a skosh more than 8 available to go out and sign somebody else. Now, I will tell you, I have seen Miguel Andujar's projected number coming in at around $8 million. So there is a flexibility there to maybe go out and get at least, at a minimum, a platoon bat, at a guy that could give you more games than that. So this move, I think, was important. I think what finally happened is Nick looked around the room and saw what you and I have been seeing, saw what others have been seeing, which is that Gavin Lux really had become a spare part luxury for $5.5 million that really didn't have any place to play. Because when you look around the rest of the roster and you take into account some of the things we heard out at Reds Fest, which we'll talk about a little bit later, there were kind of defined lanes for everybody else. And in order to get everybody in those lanes, you were taking away every moving part Gavin Lux had. And if you were just going to use him as a DH, okay, but the Reds have said, and Nick Krall has openly verbalized that he still would like to use that designated hitter position as more of a quasi day off, rotate guys through that to keep their bats in the lineup, but give them a rest from the field. So when you take all of those things into account, Nick saw the same things we saw. Gavin Lux did not have a home. He did not really have a role. And now you can take that money that you saved, you made your bullpen a little bit better, and you can maybe still address the fact that this lineup needs some more punch. And the thing I was encouraged of the most out of all this was Nick Krall looking at the cameras and looking at you and I sitting right there listening to him talk and say, we're not done. We're going to add to our position player group. That's huge.
Right. And I think that that's the big thing here. We'll talk a little bit more about Brock Burke's impact on the bullpen and what the bullpen looks like on tomorrow's episode. But we want to focus with what's next because, as Nick Krall said, there is something next. In fact, he was kind of pushed a couple of different times in the media availability following the trade. And he said so again on stage at Reds Fest that they are actively looking for a position player upgrade. What I found intriguing was I don't necessarily know that he limited himself in this, but he almost shut down any chance that the Reds are going to go get a Eugenio Suarez or Nick Castellanos by saying that he prefers that DH spot to be more of a rotational spot and not some guy who plays there every day. Although I find that odd because I kind of feel like that would have been the plan had they signed Kyle Schwarber. But again, probably only reserved for people who are from Middletown. So if you're not from Middletown, you don't get to be an everyday DH on the Cincinnati Reds. I digress. Anyway, we won't get into all that. This because is it Miguel Andujar? I would like it to be like Rhys Hoskins, although Rhys Hoskins might be a little bit more than $8 million. He might be 10 or 12 million. But I still feel like he's like a one-year deal type guy. What I find intriguing, though, is there's still a lot of people talking about the idea that they could trade for somebody. And based on who we think is in the potential trade, I think it limits them a little bit. I don't think we're talking about Ketel Marte or Jarren Duran. But if it is a trade, it's going to be for somebody that we have not already heard about.
Yeah, we're going to get into some specifics of that here in the next segment. You're definitely going to want to stick around for that. But with the trade and the pieces we think could be involved, they could have upwards of $15 to $20 million to play with. And that could bring back a significant return if you're looking at it. So the thing for me here is that you can look now and see more of the roles becoming clearer. We've been wondering, what are they going to do with Sal? What's Sal Stewart going to do? Sal Stewart, by the way, what a guy.
Yes.
Looks amazing. When he came out on stage during the season ticket holder Q&A, I leaned over to you and I said, look, best shape of their life season has started already because now. Sal Stewart came out looking like he has put in the work. And the more he sat there and answered questions and the more that he talked, the more endearing he became, the more you just want to root for him. And now we see a clearly defined role for him. He's going to play some first base. He's going to play some third base. The way he looks right now, he can play some second base, and that's going to be important because the guy that's going to give Ellie De La Cruz a day off plays second base. That's Matt McLain. So now you see a role for Sal Stewart. You see that Spencer Steer is going to be able to move around and be more of the utility, which he likes to do. You're going to be able to see that they can keep Ellie rested and healthy. And Gavin Lux didn't play into any of that. I think getting that money off the books is the most important part of that trade. It's great that they got a return, and the bullpen is so much better now than the bullpen was at the end of 2025. So, the important thing is the money, but the bullpen is in really good shape now. Tito talked about it a lot over the weekend. This pitching group is really exciting and is going to be fun to watch.
And that was something that, the different everydayers that we got to run into at Reds Fest, which was so many of you guys. I really appreciate you coming out and saying, hey, but the folks almost had a unanimous opinion of, wow, they traded Gavin Lux and they actually got back a guy that's going to help them out this year. And honestly, that's kind of where we were going with that too. We thought if you're trading Gavin Lux, you're probably trading for some AA guy just to dump payroll and then use that money elsewhere. But I feel like Nick Krall did a nice thing here. And I know that we've been critical of him this offseason, but there have been moments throughout his tenure where he makes these types of trades that they aren't the world beating and just amazing. Like, we're building Rome with this one trade here, but they do feel savvy. And this feels like a savvy trade. And what it opens up is I don't believe that this was to save money and just put that money back into somebody's pocket. It's that this money goes right back into the budget that he was given on the onset of this offseason, and he is going to reinvest that in some way. He has said multiple times they are active on the market. They are looking for a position player. He was asked, is it free agency? Is it trade? How are you looking at this? And he said, yes, whichever one works, that's what we're going for. And so I know for a fact that Nick Krall is still actively pursuing an upgrade to this lineup. Whether that is going to be an upgrade that absolutely makes us do a backflip, I'm not sure about that, but I do think it will be some form of an upgrade.
Yeah, not sure yet what is coming, but I know this, Jeff. They've got money to play with. They've got the time to get something done. And there were some notable absences at Reds Fest, both one player that wasn't supposed to be there, but you can read between the lines, and another player that was supposed to be there that then suddenly was it. Could they be involved in trade talks? Well, we're going to tell you coming up next.
The NFL playoffs are rolling along, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. So every time that you open up the app, every time that you go to the website, you can check out your new profit boost on NFL playoff game days. I took advantage of this throughout the wild card round, throughout the divisional round. It's so much fun because every play feels bigger in the playoffs with FanDuel's profit boost packs. You make your picks, then apply your profit boosts to go even bigger with the payouts while the playoffs are rolling along. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every playoff game day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Reds your first listen of the day and helping make Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network in all the land. Now listen, you live the Cincinnati Reds every single day. How would you like to do that ad-free? Over on the audio side, you can join the Everydayer Club for just $5 a month. You're going to get the Locked On Red show that you already love. You're going to get that ad-free on the audio channel. Not only that, you're going to get access to an exclusive Discord server that gives you not only Jeff and I at Locked On Reds, but every single Locked On host across every single Locked On channel to talk about whatever sport you want to talk about. If you'd like to get started, drop down in the show description. There's a link down there to get started today. Again, just $5 a month to join the Everydayer Club, ad-free on the audio channel. All right, Jeff, I think I set that up really good because the Reds could go make a trade. And there were lots of players. You know, when the initial list came out for Reds Fest, you and I were very underwhelmed. And we both were kind of like, well, we're glad we get to go. But,
Yeah.
you know, but as time moved on, the list grew and grew and grew. And to the point where the majority of the team was down at the Cincinnati Convention Center, which, by the way, the sign on the outside looked great. I was kind of wowed by that.
It was cool.
Glad to have that building back and open and operating. But there was lots of players there. And you looked around the room, most of the starting rotation was there. Most of the starting lineup was there. Guys that were going to be fighting for jobs. The bullpen dudes were there. You know, who wasn't there, though? Brady Singer wasn't there. And now he's the guy that wasn't billed ever. I don't ever recall seeing in any of the run-up to Reds Fest that Brady Singer was going to be there. So this could be easily explained away. He had a prior commitment, didn't want to do it, whatever. He wasn't there. Tyler Stephenson was on the list as recent as a week or so ago. He was still on the list of guys that were going to attend. And then he was what we call a last-minute scratch from the lineup. So you look at that and you can't help but read between the lines when you're talking about the Reds possibly having to make a trade and go out to bring somebody in. While that's going on, the Reds had Jose Trevino front and center. He was on panels. He was featured at the season ticket Q&A. He is a really smart dude. I really enjoyed hearing him speak. And I got a picture we'll throw up on the screen when we talk about Reds Fest a little bit later. Got a picture with Jose Trevino, got to talk to him for just a second. Really good dude. So I look at that, knowing that Tyler Stephenson laughed off the Reds extension offer, knowing this is the last year of team control of Tyler Stephenson, and knowing they are willing to take him to arbitration over $250,000. I think Ty Steve is pissed, and I think the Reds could be shopping him.
I think that it was clear when we were going back and looking at the projected rosters of attendees for Reds Fest to note that it was a week ago that Tyler Stephenson was on the list, because guess what happened a week ago? The arbitration deadline. And when we found out that they're going to fight over $250K, yeah, I think that if the Reds found the right offer, and I don't know that they're looking specifically for a major leaguer, because as we have discussed before, I think that there's a really good chance that Tyler Stephenson could just have a madman type of contract year and just go crazy and perform really well and really help this team. So I don't know that this will be they're going to trade him for a bucket of baseballs and a broken seat from left field from wherever.
No.
I think that they are looking for a deal that makes sense. However, there have been a lot of reports that teams are contacting the Reds about their starting pitcher surplus and what it would take to get them. And I've seen the reports, and it was Ken Rosenthal that really came out with a definitive, like, yes, Nick Krall has literally shut down any offer that involves Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, or Andrew Abbott. He did not say Brady Singer. And so you put that together with Singer not being there, the fact that Singer's making the most money on the team, and the fact that Tyler Stephenson wasn't there. You put those two guys together, Steve, we're not talking about $3 million of savings between sending Gavin Lux for a left-handed relief pitcher. There's a really good chance that they could send both these guys in a deal, get back a pretty decent outfielder or somebody to plug into the lineup and upgrade the lineup, while also saving a lot more money to go make another move where you could perceive that they would get not one but two upgrades to the lineup. So there's a lot of ways that savvy Nick Krall, second time I'm using that word in today's episode, could make the type of move that would really work and surprise us to where, like we said, and I hold to this, and I'm glad that he's proving me wrong. I would be shocked if the Reds made the necessary moves to upgrade the lineup. Nick Krall said, buddy, hold my 7 up because I'm going to help out.
I love that you're saying nice things about Nick Krall on the very day that you took me to the sacred spot where your Krall Defenders comic book club meets for lunch. I love that you're saying nice things about Nick when I was in that sacred space. I really do appreciate that. But, you're not wrong in what you're saying. Nick Krall has an opportunity here to, undo a lot of the damage and perception that's been carried through this offseason about the Reds not doing anything, not addressing the needs. I still, right now, I have them, I gave them a failing grade. Several of the everydayers that I talked to at Reds Fest pushed back at me a little bit and said they weren't quite sure if the offseason was an F. I think with now another bullpen addition, the way this bullpen looks, the way this pitching staff looks, I'm willing to give them a D right now until they address this lineup. I don't think it's a failing offseason at this point, but it's not a very high grade. Nick Krall could fix that with one move. Especially if it involves sending away a Brady Singer and bringing back a bopper. So,
and we talked about the fact that it almost feels as though he has taken some of the things that we have said to heart as almost like a dare, and he's trying to come through with the dare. So let's push this a little bit further. I feel like the upcoming moves could possibly push the offseason grade to maybe a C-. I think he'd have to do something shocking to get a better grade than that. I mean, absolutely out of left field. Never heard of this deal even being available, and the Reds pull something like this off. All right, Nick, you know what to do. But no, really, like I kind of feel like the best case scenario here is they go get a guy who maybe we don't necessarily know is available, but he's a pretty decent trade acquisition, and then they go bring back Miguel Andujar, or maybe they have enough money to go bring back Austin Hayes, because we've also heard that too, is that Austin Hayes is also in the discussion. But quite frankly, if all you do is just bring back Austin Hayes, the lineup isn't better because, well, we've done that before. And so, all right, you bring back Austin Hayes, you lose a couple other guys out of this lineup. The lineup is still where it is, and I still kind of give this offseason like a D+. So if it's Austin Hayes plus somebody, then we're talking.
I have a formula, and it's not a very hard formula. I like to use the numbers, and I like to be able to look at something and give me a really good idea about what direction things are going, and then I can dig deeper and go from there. Here's how Nick Krall fixes the grade. If he gets me a guy that hit 25 to 30 home runs last season, this offseason grade goes to a B. If that guy has multiple years of team control, he goes to a B+. And if he makes another move on top of that, he can get this offseason to an A.
I like that a lot. I would love to see that happen because it feels like there's more to this offseason, which is great because I think at the beginning of January, whenever we were seeing the Reds signing relief pitcher after relief pitcher after relief pitcher, we're like, well, good. We addressed one thing in this offseason's wish list, and it kind of feels like this is it. They're not going to do anything else. Here we are sitting on the precipice of yet another move and maybe another move and maybe another move. So it's kind of fun to think about that sort of thing. But I know there was a lot of fun this weekend at the new Cincinnati Convention Center. They have redacted the previous names. They're no longer involved. But the Cincinnati Convention Center was fantastic to be at. It was fantastic to be at Reds Fest. But there was one thing that we came away with, and it has to do with Matt McLain, about just how much he is revered. If you can't watch us, you can always listen to us on your favorite podcast app because we are free and available everywhere you get your podcast. Thanks so much for making Locked On Reds part of your day. And thank you for coming to say hi. Those of you who did, and I tried to ask everybody's name, and I tried to remember them. I remember
So many
Matt,
people.
and I remember Roger, and I remember George, and I remember so many different folks, and y'all were super, super nice. And I was so glad to get to talk Reds to so many different folks. And that was the biggest reason that I wanted Reds Fest to come back. And we had a lot of fun, got some great pictures and stuff. And I definitely want to show.
And speaking of the pictures, if we took pictures, throw them up on social media, tag Jeff and I in them. I would love to see the pictures. There were so many of you guys. I told Jeff, like, it's hopeless to try and keep track of the names at this point. There's just been so many people. But if you took pictures, please share them, post them. Would love to see them. It was a great time.
Yeah, there's so much fun getting to talk with folks. And I will say this, like, outside of just the revelry and just getting excited about Reds baseball again and things like that, I took away something that I didn't expect, at least not to the degree that we saw it, because I know that at Reds Fest, there's a lot of like, oh yes, everything is awesome. This guy is awesome. This guy is awesome. Just whoever it is that's awesome. But the Q&A that we went to, different main stage events that happened, and they were talking to players and talking to coaches and things like this, all of it at some point had some reference to Matt McLain and how much he is just interwoven into the fabric of this team. I think it's very clear that if you were to ask anyone on the team right now who would be the captain with the C on his chest, it would be Matt McLain.
You know, Jeff, I am really happy to hear you say that. You know, as the guy that wanted to send Matt McLain down, I'm glad to hear that you're turning the corner.
Who's on my t-shirt right now? Who's on my t-shirt?
I see you supporting him now. And I mean, you know, you don't always, you know, say the best things, but I'm happy to see you admit your mistakes. But look, you're absolutely right. The number of times that Matt McLain's name came up, the number of times he was mentioned, it didn't matter the context. It's like, who do you want to golf with? Who do you want to hang out with? Who do you want to be around with? Who's going to be the one that's, you know, going to do these things? Matt McLain was always the answer. And we've been saying we really feel like he is going to rebound, that the player that he was last year is not indicative of who he is. When he starts this season healthy and ready to go, it's going to be much closer to the guy that what he was in his rookie year. You know, I'm thinking he could be, you know, I think it's not unrealistic to say 3.5 to 4 WAR would not surprise us at all this coming year. And the captain on his chest thing, that's a real deal. That's how these guys were talking about him. Now, I'm not saying they're going to put the C on his chest and start that before any of those things. But if they were to pick somebody, he would definitely be in like the top 2 dudes on this team that would be considered for that. Another big thing that I thought came out of Reds Fest was with Jose Trevino. I talked about earlier how they put him front and center. They did things. Both Terry Francona and Sal Stewart sat on a stage and looked directly at Jose Trevino and said, that guy is going to be a major league manager one day. That's how much they think he knows the game and how smart he is about baseball. So there was a lot of takeaways from this Reds Fest, getting to hear directly from the players. Were you surprised by the Matt McLain of it all? I mean, I knew he was important and I knew that he was well liked in the clubhouse, but I don't think I had a good read on just how much he was, you know, entwined and it was a part of this team and a part of this group in a way that they look at him as a leader the way that they do.
I'm trying to think of like a comparison as to the feel for this, but yeah, like it's clear that he is the main guy on everyone's mind on the team. And I think it's hilarious because we've seen plenty of folks and in the comments section and on social medias and all this other stuff that are just ready to move on from him. And I think if you were to tell any person in that organization that, they would laugh you out of the building because it's clear that they revere him. It's not just a, boy, we're really hopeful for him to turn around. In their minds, he already has. And so I would love to see it. We've got to see it. Obviously, haven't seen it yet. He had a rough year last year. But in their minds, that turnaround that we expect has already happened. And I think that if he were to be a 3, 4, war player next season, at the end of the year, literally everybody would look in the camera and go like, yeah, what'd you expect? And that for me was so impressive to see that kind of a support for a dude coming off a year like he had.
Yeah, I feel like he's just this close to being a guy that we're going to start talking about. We're going to do a whole show tomorrow on the Ellie De La Cruz extension that wasn't, and the implications of that. And part of that conversation is going to be, well, if you're willing to spend that kind of money and extend somebody, and he said no, who do you look to next? I really think that could be Matt McLain. And we'll get into a lot of that on tomorrow's show. But before we get out of here today, I want to spend just a little bit more time talking about the Reds Fest of it all. I know a lot of people were down at the convention center, 21,000 people over the 2 days. The Reds are reporting that's up from 16,000 in 2023 when they last had Reds Fest. So big growth in the numbers. Everybody was down there. Everybody was excited about baseball. The players were engaged on Friday night. The show was over. Everybody was going home. They were trying to clean up. They were turning off the lights, and there sat Andrew Abbott at his table telling, come on, come on, you want me to sign something for you? Let's go. He was there till nearly midnight, and they finally had to push him out. That is tremendous. The players were engaging. They were willing to talk with the fans, willing to be involved. I had an opportunity to talk to Tony Santillan, Jose Trevino, Andrew Abbott, and Cam Collier, and talked briefly for just a couple seconds about Hawaii. Told them, we were going to do a photo. So I'm like, listen, Hawaii, you guys want to give me a shaka? These guys, they didn't hesitate. They were fun. They were playful. Here's me with Jose Trevino and Tony Santillan, who, by the way, could have body slammed anybody in the convention center. That is one big, strong dude. I have never felt tiny in my life, Jeff, and he made me feel tiny. So these guys were great. We had a good laugh. And then also with Cam Collier and Andrew Abbott, they leaned into it too. Really appreciate those guys just taking the time to engage and be involved and make sure that everybody had a good time. And I didn't run into anybody at the convention center that was like, it's all right. I'm not having. Everybody was having a great time. We ran into so many people, faces we haven't seen since the end of the season from the ballpark. I recognize a lot of people from the ballpark that I see, down there in our spot. And if you know where our spot is, you know where to find us. But lots of people. It was just great to see everybody, and everybody. That's why I love Reds Fest. Everybody just excited and ready. All of us to go out, and we're like, well, who's starting tomorrow? Let's go to a game. It gives you that kind of energy and feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the beauty of it is just that. I don't know. And I don't ever want to find out what it would take for this to be wrong, but I don't know that there's a way that it can be negative because of all the different players there and how they all approached it. They were all so into it. And, I forgot to get the picture of me and Mrs. Locked On Reds with Tony Santillan and Jose Trevino, but I got the chance to shake his hand and I shake Tony's hand, and I was just like, dude, thanks for pitching every other day last year. He kind of gave me a chuckle, and he's like, you're welcome. It's like, yeah, you're right, though. You see him in person, you're just like, oh, I think he's a guy who could pitch every other day and maybe also mix in a pro wrestling career doing it because he just looks like the biggest dude and just the most strongest dude. Also, same with Zach Nexon. We saw him from afar. He was giant, and his nickname's Big Sugar. It's Big Sugar because he's tall, and when you're that tall, of course you're going to be big. And I don't even know that I'd fit in that jersey. I think it would be a tent on me because he's that big. But I love those moments, getting to see players and see them react in different scenarios because everybody on the team is comfortable on Reds Fest because they're there to just be with the fans. It's not, okay, we got to go play a game here in 20 minutes, or we just got done with a game and it was a tough one, and so we're in a bad mood or something like that. Even Tito was cutting loose at the season ticket member thing. They were talking about the fact that, Terry Francona is not the biggest fan of earrings. And so they were trying to say, okay, what do the Reds need to do as a team for you to pierce your ear? This was Jim Day that was asking him this, and he's like, we got to win. Jim Day's like, so make the playoffs? He's like parade win. We got to win. And it's like, all right, let's win this World Series and get Tito to pierce his ear. But it was so much fun. And it's clear that this city and this team and this fan base as a whole needed Reds Fest. Missing it for a whole year was just such a bummer. And I really hope that we never go another year without it.
Yeah, no, I was really glad to be back and be Red centered and talk baseball. Boy, did we talk baseball this weekend. It was good fun.
Was wonderful.
Again, it was great to see everybody. Just one little note, just a quick shout out, hat tip to Hannah Carr for being such a good sport, because you guys are undefeated. Literally, like the first 7 people that walked up to Hannah Carr were like, "Is this Mrs. Locked On Reds? I told you that was going to be a thing," and it was. And she leaned into it, and she had a good time with it. So, I appreciate her for it. It was good fun.
It said it one time, and it clicked on. And also, one last take about Reds Fest: this is the time to do it. Let's move it to January in perpetuity. Let's have it middle of January as you're really starting, like, because I know like here in a week or two, we're going to see that post on Twitter, the post that we all love to see from the Reds that says loading up the truck and driving to Goodyear. It's coming soon. But it feels like this in this spot would just be such a bigger difference, where at the beginning of December, sure, you can get like Christmas gifts and all that other stuff for folks, but at the same time, there's so much other stuff going on that it feels like Reds Fest is an afterthought. Here in January, where nothing else is going on, that's a perfect spot to have it. I kind of hope that they keep it in this spot moving forward, and I think that would be a smart way to do it. And I think that's a smart way for us to end today's podcast. Thanks so much for joining us on today's Locked On Reds podcast. Again, thank you for everybody that came out and said hey, and thank you for checking out today's episode. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you subscribe right here on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Free and available everywhere. And we're going to be with you all throughout the year, especially leading up to the season and stuff like that. Tomorrow, like we mentioned, a lot of talk about the fact that Ellie's agent turned down a contract extension offer, why we think that that's good from the Reds, and how we think they can really move from this. That's going to be the subject of tomorrow's episode, so make sure you join us then. Until then, make sure that you hang around if you're watching here on YouTube for the Locked On's national 24/7 stream, or if you're listening on your favorite podcast app, make sure you go check out Locked On MLB. Sully's got you covered. I was actually on with Sully talking about, how the Dodgers are ruining baseball. And I'm just kidding. I didn't say that. But I did think it was interesting, their move for Kyle Tucker and what it means for the rest of baseball. So much stuff is over there on Locked On MLB because Sully has got you covered, just like us, every single day. Although, unlike us, we will be Locked On Reds every single day. Said it one time. And it caught on.
It was so funny. I told you that was going to be a thing.